What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with James of Comatose. Thank you so much for your time, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, as I was mentioning before we started rolling, A Way Back is a phenomenal album. Really, really enjoyed listening to it. Really, what was kind of like the thought process going into the making of this album? Was there kind of like a preconceived idea, or being that, all of the members were kind of like are involved in other projects as well? Were you kind of like trying to combine your efforts together? How did A Way Back by Comatose sort of see the light of day?
Um, Man, I'll try to sum this up without being. I'm definitely a talker. I talk for a living. My job is,
Good.
being a counselor.
Good.
Um, so basically, probably towards the end of 2019, I had demoed a few songs that were a little bit out of the ballpark of any project I had been writing for, and it had been kind of a running joke for a year or two at that point, probably since 2018, within Fail to Decay, one of my other bands, that we were going to do a rock-oriented project, or the kind of shoegaze-oriented project even, and we weren't going to do it till we were all like hitting our 30s. Well, I'll be 30 in just under 2 months. Two of the other guys in Comatose are over 30, and our drummer is the lucky young one who's only about 26. But we were joking around essentially that two of the guys had turned 30, and their dating lives were crumbling. And so we started a joke band called
That
Sex Over 30.
that explains everything. And most people, when they break up, they either form a band or they become stand-up comedians. So this is already this is already. I love this story already.
So we started Sex Over 30, and I demoed a couple songs that, like I said, I wasn't sure what to do with them, but I tossed them at my drummer and Failed to Decay, and was just like, hey, I know it's like kind of a joke, but it would be really fun to like just start a bar band to play around Minnesota instead of like going on tour all the time when we want to play shows, because we never play locally really, and there's not really a scene for metal without driving an hour and a half away from our home city in Rochester. And so over the course of 6 or so months, we ended up writing like 9-10 songs and narrowed it down at the beginning of 2020. We were planning on hitting the studio in like March of last year, so about a year ago. By the way, if you hear lots of barking, I have 4 dogs. Sorry.
It's all good.
We ended up hitting the studio in June last year, and unfortunately, like 2020, we expected, because we had some shows lined up for like May after we had recorded, where we had planned to record, that we would just play lots of local shows and be a dad bar band basically. That's what we were calling it. Is a dad bar band, but
It's a new genre.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we ended up tracking in a studio, and that's not something that we've like done a lot of. We've done a lot of our own tracking in our other bands. Right here, right where I'm sitting, we usually end up tracking everything. So except for drums, we went to a studio and worked with an old friend of ours from the music scene about 10 years ago in Southeast Minnesota, and he runs a studio here in Rochester called Carpet Booth. And he really helped the vision come to. Was actually kind of in the producer role, suggesting like certain pedals, certain things to change during the recording process, or adding pieces here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty sweet.
You mentioned that you were demoing this stuff back in 2019. Being that we're hearing this, in the beginning of 2021, is what we're hearing a lot of these songs? Are these how these were originally demoed and how they were originally structurally written, or did these songs maybe change a lot in a 2-year time period?
No, they didn't change really. With the exception of that, the other guitar player besides myself, Adam, came in and added some of the leads that were initially in some of the versions of the song. I'm a very rhythm-oriented guitar player, though I write leads somewhat. So I went into it and I wrote most of the songs by myself, and then had the bassist and drummer demo their stuff to it too, and then the other guitar player kind of landed at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, about a little over a year ago now. He jumped in and he added a lot of the leads that you ended up hearing.
What's interesting is it almost seems like this like shoegaze sort of rock style has been coming back lately. Like, obviously we love a lot of, the classic bands such as My Bloody Valentine, but like to really I feel like with bands like Comatose as well as bands like Tennis System or Teenage Wrist, like a lot of
Oh yeah.
those styles of bands, it really seems like it's sort of coming back. Was this maybe kind of like a style that you always maybe envisioned doing outside of Fail to Decay in a way?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, my other two bands that are definitely more towards this style of music are Amiensis and Chrome Waves. And there's quite a bit of similarity in some of that style. I think my guitar style is similar no matter what I'm doing. But I had to resist the urge. And actually, one of the ways that these songs did change is I had to resist the urge to tremolo pick. In like a black metal style, or I had to resist the urge to scream, and that's one thing that I had to from the initial demos when we hit the studio. I changed and tried to get rid of as much screaming as possible because like more than half of the songs contained screaming, and I was like, we're never gonna get booked in like bars around town if I scream this much. So that was a conscious decision to take it out of as much as possible, except for the two songs where it has little appearances.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because, like, you led me perfectly into the next question because clearly, like, the concept of Comatose wasn't exactly to combine elements of Chrome Waves and Fail to Decay and so else. It was just completely like you were all trying to kind of like step into uncharted territory that you haven't done before, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was not only like song structure, but it was even just like writing hooks. Like I haven't really tried to write a whole lot of verse chorus style songs in a non-metal way, especially because I would say that Amiensis and Chrome Waves both have verse chorus style song structures sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I was essentially just not trying to write metal. Like that was definitely what I set out to do, and that was kind of something we all had our eyes upon doing. Is just like we want to write something we enjoy playing, but without it, scaring people off.
hmm Do you think that maybe by experimenting with this and stepping into this uncharted territory, that maybe you open up more doors on what you could experiment in with your other projects, or do you kind of want to keep Comatose to be like a separate entity from Fail to Decay and Chrome Waves and everything?
It did, but it definitely defined that because I was worried there was going to be some overlap between some of them. It defined essentially like this is the direction this band can go if without getting or with getting a less into a less metal area. And yeah, I mean essentially I think I would say that I was most worried about Comatose and Chrome Waves having overlap, and Comatose found its own non-metal sound, and Chrome Waves found its own non-metal sound, still rooted within metal though to some degree. So uh, it's gonna be interesting because they actually the next Chrome Waves album is already tracked and done, and we're looking at putting that out in like the next 6 months too. So
I'm excited. I enjoyed the last Chrome Waves offerings, so I'm excited to hear more Chrome Waves.
It's even more different. I'll put it that way. It's as heavy as Comatose, but doesn't sound anything like it. Put it that way.
But the best way, I remember recommending Chrome Waves to a couple peers of mine, and they're like, "What's like the style of heaviness?" And I said, "It's anything between Everclear and Emperor."
That's a really accurate description, actually.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah, everything but the kitchen, everything including the kitchen sink.
Yep.
Yep.
Now there's like sludge parts and doom parts and pop rock parts. I don't know. Crazy.
I think Chrome Waves tackles every element on the periodic table of heavy metal subgenres.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Yep. Now, do you feel that maybe in Comatose you're expressing like a different side of yourself that maybe we wouldn't hear in Fail to Decay or Chrome Waves or anything like that? Do you almost feel like it's almost portraying like a new identity in a way?
Definitely. I don't think I've ever considered it. I'd never intentionally gone that way per se, but I think there was, and I'm not gonna say I think there definitely was like a sense that like we wanted to do something very specific to like music we grew up listening to. I mean, we all grew up listening to metal too, and that's why we've been playing it for 15 years at this point for most of us. But I mean, we really intended to like we wanted to make a record based on the kind of music we grew up listening to. Essentially, that was the intent. And a lot of our like band jams, like when we're on the road, was usually not metal at all. And like some of the bands you listed, like Teenage Wrist or like Tennis System, and like Alice in Chains or Slow Dive, Cockatoo Twins, My Bloody Valentine. Like we jammed a lot of that, a lot of Thrice.
Spotlights, you know them?
No,
Oh, they're
I'll
actually
have to check them out too.
yeah, they're really good.
Or like Basement was another one. Title Fight was a big one. Like we wanted to throw it back to some of the stuff that we like jammed all the time together in the band, but never just because we were a metal band. Like you can't do that. You can't just go from being a metal band most of the time to playing, rock and roll. So we had to do something different, and that's what happened. We just started another band.
What I love about shoegaze though is like it really almost seems like appropriate for any type of setting. Like it almost seems like it's the music for the brightest days. I call it the Tale of Two Cities genre. It's there for the best of times and the worst of times because like there's a very depressing shoegaze. I don't know if you would call them like a band. I guess they're more like a duet, but the Ravenettes. And
Okay.
they're like really their stuff is really like trippy, very like like atmospheric. But then like you have bands like that are very hardcore oriented, incorporating that, like Loathe, for example. Like their last album had a lot of shoegaze elements into it as well, and even Code Orange has some like shoegaze stuff into their sound too. So it's really interesting. It almost seems like shoegaze is like duct tape. It can almost fix anything.
Yeah, it's interesting to see as over like the last couple of years, especially. I would say that it permeated. Oh, I'm sorry if you can hear those dogs; they're going crazy.
Yeah.
But over the last like 5 or 6 years now, shoegaze has really permeated metal specifically, and it started a lot with like the Appalachian black metal. It started with, it didn't start with, but like, you go back to like the early 2000s and there was already bands like, Alcest was being formed and stuff.
Astronoid.
Yep. Astronoid was, they've been around for like a decade already too. That's crazy. Less Discret, or the Secrets, they're Less Discret from France as well. A lot of the European bands were starting it, and like Deaf Heaven made it really popular. Per se, I guess. Somebody would probably love to kill me for that comment.
No, we'll get killed. We'll get killed together. I was saying that Deaf Heaven is like the corn of post black metal.
Yes, yeah, and like ironically, I'm wearing a Deaf Heaven shirt right now, and I just threw this on because it's like decent. It's like 60 degrees outside, and I wanted to walk the dogs, but it's too windy to wear a t-shirt. So
yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, there's a long sleeve or t-shirt, a Deaf Heaven. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a very accurate description of Deaf Heaven for sure.
Yeah, and like I feel like what it is too. What I really enjoyed about A Way Back is like to go from like there is definitely a formula that works for it. I feel like people who like Circles will appreciate a song like Alone or Skin or Spread or anything like that. But there are many like different emotions. Would you say that maybe each track is almost like indicative or representative of a particular emotion that you were feeling in the songwriting process?
Yeah, and they were all, there was quite a bit of time period, like we were talking about earlier, between the first song being written and the last song being done. So Circles was actually the very last track we ended up writing, and I think Alone was the first track we wrote. So when we did Alone, right away off the bat, we kind of had no idea where we were going with any of this. And same with Gone. Like we were just like, let's write something rocky with like choruses and verses instead of breakdowns. And then Circles was actually written at the beginning of 2020, right before we had booked the studio. And so we knew with Circles that we wanted it to be the first track on the song, even though it was the last track written. Yeah, sorry, I can't even focus because my dogs are so annoying me right now.
Yeah, it's all good.
Of course, I told my wife when she got home, I'm like, hey, can you make sure the dogs are like kind of quiet so I can do this call? And evidently that's not working. So they when they see people walking down the street, they kind of go, or not people, but they see dogs. So and when there's four of them, they act like a pack.
At least you're protected.
Yeah. No, even this morning so I know our last session was canceled because of COVID, basically, and then I got the second shot finally after about a month of waiting for the second shot.
Congratulations.
For the Pfizer vax yesterday, and 12 hours. I got it about 9 a.m. yesterday, and 12 hours later, it just straight into fever and chills, and I did not sleep last night. And well, I did, but I mean, I would only get like 45 minutes of sleep and then be awake for an hour and then 45 minutes of sleep off and on and stuff. So I'm finally feeling okay, but I'm keeping a steady regimen of Tylenol. So
I just recovered from it, from the virus, so I know the feeling.
Yeah, I mean, if this is just what the vaccine does to you, I can't imagine how bad COVID actually is.
Yeah, interviewing Cannibal Corpse while having it definitely made me feel very, very metal. So I will say that.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah, y'all are a bunch of posers. Can't make fun of my hybrid theory tattoo now.
Oh yes, okay. No lie. I mean, like one of the first albums I got into that was heavier than mainstream music in general was Hybrid Theory, and I'm 29.
I'm 27,
like,
so
yeah. I was like that was like fifth grade, so
kindergarten for me.
Ooh. So I mean, it was like it was life. Like Linkin Park was life growing up at first.
I've always said
I was introduced to real metal, but
I've always said if it wasn't for Hybrid Theory, I wouldn't be into the Stench of Redemption or Tomb of the Mutilated or Once Upon a Cross or any of those death metal bands. So
no, for real, because the screaming introduced me to that type of like hair-raising feeling, and that's why I got into metal in the first place.
That album was everybody's gateway drug, either into metal or to hip hop. Like it really was like the best of both the worlds album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, I have friends still from all the way back in, was that 2000 that I keep up with that are, some of them are really big into hip hop, like producing it and stuff now. So I went the other way. I went the metal way.
Yep. To each his own. It all circles back to Linkin Park.
Yep.
But like it's really interesting though, like when I hear A Way Back, like it's funny that you like wrote these songs. Like you mentioned, like Alone was one of the first songs that you wrote, or one of the last, and like like Circles was one of the last songs, but you started the album off with Circles because it almost seems like each song was able to kind of lead into another. You know what I mean? Like I can't listen to this album on shuffle. You know what I mean? I feel like when I start with Circles, I just need to have it all.
Mm-hmm. When we went, and that's really encouraging to hear, because when we went in to track it, we had kind of figured out this would be the track order already, and then so we intentionally tried to have melt the songs to blend into each other a little bit and go in a specific order, and it wasn't specifically to tell like an overarching theme or story, but there kind of is in the lyrics. In general, but it's kind of just wading through like a sea of emotions for the topic of it. So it's not specific, and it's not, like I said, there's not like an actual direction per se. But we knew when we went into the studio that this felt like the most that track order had the best potential. So
Yeah.
we wanted to track it to make it feel like it was flowing from point A to point B.
Kind of like this could maybe go for both either Comatose or your other projects, but do you find that maybe like a story or lyrics or just maybe like a lyrical idea or a concept could dictate the direction of the structure of the sound or just the music in general?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely associate, coming from a more black metal background in general, like seasonal related topics, or especially because in some bands I write a lot about religious related topics too, or philosophical related topics. But I associate them definitely with certain types of music or certain styles of guitar or vocals. So I didn't really know going into this record what I was really going to write about at first. So that was that was a challenge to kind of tie it in together, especially since we went from, writing at the beginning of 2019 to writing the last song at the beginning of 2020.
And I'd imagine that with at the beginning of 2020, so with the way that the world is taking shape now, I'd imagine you have plenty of ideas philosophically you could address, right?
Oh yeah, we have another album written. we, not tracked, but we have written it and demoed it. So that's what COVID has done.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just sit at home and write on the weekend instead of being at a show or playing. So
Yeah. Well, being that you write from a philosophical standpoint, like, do you mainly, like, is there a lot of your personal experiences vested into it, or is there kind of like a lot of research or external experiences that are involved with it?
certain albums I have done more specific research, but a lot of it comes from my background and my career as a counselor. Um, and not only discussing, sorry, once again, it's starting again. Not only like my experience with patients of mine, but even my own mental health to some degree, because there is a certain level of burnout with being a mental health and addiction practitioner. So,
And thank you for your
uh,
service for doing that.
well, thank you. But it's yeah, it's rough. I've seen people burn out in a year doing this type of work. Um, that's not to say I'm like overly empathetic and just pouring myself out to these people, because I do cut people off pretty hard when they're being extremely manipulative or um, not working on anything during their counseling or with their counseling. But uh, yeah, it still affects you unknowingly over time, especially hearing the amount of tragic things you hear on a weekly basis. Even in the moment when you're like, "Wow, this like isn't making me feel like I need to cry or anything," but down the line, you start to feel you feel it internally without it being a conscious thing that is affecting you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, some people, I've had this discussion with artists, and I've been guilty of feeling this way too. But like some artists be like, no, music is all about me, art is all about me. And I'm not like, saying that it's wrong to feel that way, but like, it's always personal. The world doesn't influence me. The world is going to influence you whether you realize it or not and whether you like it or not. Like, just the world around you is, whether it's the people you interact with, or even it's something as simple as the weather. Like, the world is always going to have an impact on your creative process, no matter how personal you think your work can be.
hmm Absolutely agree, and that's why I used to write about specific topics, especially when Amiensis began, because that's my longest running project. But by the time I got to especially doing Comatose, I was just writing about experience, like personal life experience and my own thoughts, instead of trying to write about specific things. Like, and I think that was something that like bands I grew up listening to, excluding Linkin Park,
Mhm.
usually, especially in the metal realm, wrote about specific like events or specific topics. They were very specific in their songwriting or their like album motifs, essentially. And when Comatose became a thing, I was just like, I just need somewhere to like vent. I don't have that in another project. I don't just vent.
Yeah.
So
Well, what I've always thought is great about rock or metal or any of this is just the different subject matters. Like Mastodon is very philosophical in their music. They have a great way of tying history into personal elements. A band like Fear Factory, they have kind of like a subject matter that they address in all of their albums that they kind of stick with. Then you have, one of my personal favorite lyricists is Jesse Leach of Killswitch, and like, he's able to bring in subject matter from everywhere, whether it's political commentary or a personal commentary, and use many different vocal styles to address it. So I think really it's interesting how you have different projects to express different philosophies, including Comatose. It almost seems like you unlocked a different songwriting process that maybe you never would have discovered otherwise.
definitely not. And I am really missing playing these songs because we haven't gotten to actually play besides shooting 2 music videos together since March of last year.
Hmm. Well,
So it's Yeah, it's been a big bummer. I mean, we tracked in June. We shot a video in July, and then actually we shot a music video about 2 weeks ago. That's not. I mean, it's obviously not out yet. We'll be soon, hopefully. And we got to play one of the songs during that, obviously, but we haven't gotten to play the full track list since March of last year, and we'd only gotten together to play through the whole album twice before COVID really took off, and we stopped all getting together at the same time.
Hmm. Well, we look forward. It just promised me when shows do happen again, because we're going to enter the best era of music when this is over. No question about it. Like I really,
yeah, musicians are hungry.
oh my God, and you have people right now exerting their creativity when they could finally do it. I mean, I'm avoiding the mosh pit for maybe about a good year after this because
much pent up rage.
As somebody who spends a lot of their time, covering like slam shows and deathcore shows, I'm getting a new tooth crown soon enough as it is. Like I don't want to,
Not a hockey player.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Me as a hockey player. Ha. Oh, you are?
No, I'm not. I'm just a big hockey fan.
All right. Well,
you live in the cold area of the world, and you end up liking the sports.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a big hockey guy, but please, whatever team you have, tell them to leave my Rangers alone.
I'm a Wild fan, so they're okay. We're not even going to play each other unless we hit the playoff or probably the Stanley Cups, just because of the way that the NHL broke it up to be more COVID safe. Is like there's like 8 teams in a division, and they play each other 8 times basically, and that's how the season's going. Instead of usually in a season you end up playing everybody like 2 to 5 times in the entire league. But
yeah, I'm more of a baseball guy, and it's going to take like a year just to play one inning with the way that the world is. So
yeah, I was amazed that they ended up getting, especially since it started off so terribly last July, that they ended up completing the the season last year. Because it was just like
I put complete in quotes.
Yeah. It's like week 2. Everybody on the Marlins has COVID. Like, what?
Yeah. That's. I'm excited to see. Like, I really think like all the albums that have come out this time, and I'm talking every single album from like Cannibal Corpse's new album scheduled to come out to Lady Gaga's album that came out last year. Like all of the albums and these live stream performances that we've done and everything, they're going to be like historical musical forms of documentation. Like I can almost see like, I mean, it sounds kind of shitty to say because it almost sounds like profiting off of a tragedy, but like, almost kind of like the COVID Rock and Roll Museum, like all these albums that have come out at this time, these different live stream performances, these different methods of creativity. Like, when shows happen again, I mean, when shows do happen again and I'm back to doing in-person interviews, I'm going to scroll down to the COVID era of, like I'm thinking about making a separate playlist for all these interviews that I've been doing during this certain time and kind of like using it as a timeline. Like, okay, this is what an interview sounded like in April of 2020. Now this is what it sounds like in June during all that unrest that was happening. And then this is what an interview sounded like during the election. This is what an interview sounded like after I did an interview like as like the DC siege was happening one time. So like,
oh my God.
So like, it's just like, it's going to be interesting to see like a timeline of just these interviews and how it affected everybody.
No kidding. It's cliche to say, but what a fucking crazy last 13 months or so now at this point. It's just been so tumultuous.
Yep,
especially in the States.
I already see like maybe 3 or 4 bands trying to name their band. We are Pfizer. We are Moderna.
No. Oh my God.
There's already 2 bands out there called COVID-19. So.
Oh, perfect. Are they on Metal Archives yet?
Maybe. You know what? I'll look it up.
There's a great Facebook group called Stupid Metal Archives Bands, and it's just people posting like really stupid band names that made it onto Metal Archives.
Or what about my favorite is when somebody says just a word and adds the word core at the end of it, and it's all of a sudden a new genre.
Oh yes. Oh no.
Yeah, like and then you go on Wikipedia to research that genre, and there's only like 3 bands in that entire genre, and then they have like a whole like essay on the history and the origins of it.
Or like just the I like some of those Wikipedia pages are like just 3 sentences because they don't have any external links anywhere.
Yeah.
Like we have one source for this. It's a Facebook post from 2011.
Yeah, watch. I mean, I remember being in college and somebody tried to use a Snapple fact as a form for their research paper and citing the Snapple cap. So people are going to be citing Facebook posts as a means of research soon, which terrifies me.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think like obviously I've had Facebook for probably 14 or so years now by now.
Yeah, I've
I
been
was in
using it
high
for more than
school.
half my life now. It's strange to say.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's the largest media like piece of media I think that exists. So I would bet there's more Facebook users than even Twitter users.
Yeah. Well, with how like if you're in history class, they show you like political cartoons back in the day that were like used as propaganda back at that time, like artifacts.
Oh yeah,
Memes are going to be like in 100 years from now. Memes are going to be what's used.
studied like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does this meme say? You have this cat hissing at this crying blonde girl. What does this meme express in this historical context?
Oh, the pointed one. Yeah, yeah.
Or look at all these Bernie Sanders memes. What could this
Just like,
potentially mean? Yeah.
yeah.
So we laugh
Studying the
about it
historical
now.
context.
We laugh about it now. They ain't going to be laughing about it in 100 years from now when they're analyzing us.
Nope, nope. That's weird. That's really scary.
Yeah.
That's what our generation's going to be known for.
Yeah. The meme generation.
The advent of the meme.
The advent of the meme. We may have a concept. You may have a concept for future songwriting.
I was going to say that could be a band name if anybody wants to steal that. It's up for grabs.
Yep. I come up with puns and ideas all the time on this channel, and they're welcome to steal their public domain. So, but before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion. Is there just anything else with Comatose or any of the projects that you're involved with that you would like to promote? Maybe a live stream performance, maybe to hold some people over, or can you maybe bring Comatose to New York City when shows do happen again?
Yeah, I definitely can. It's just going to be, whenever the time is right and they allow us to. Actually, I flew out to New York 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And yeah, at the end of February, and helped a buddy move back to Minnesota. He'd been out there since 2009 when we went to college. So I flew out there and landed, and try to make the story really short. But when you land in New York, the military is waiting for you at the airport, and they have contact tracing sheets for you to sign, so that if you're in New York for more than 4 days, they want you to quarantine and get a COVID test. And they called me a week later, which was last weekend, and were like, "Hey, are you still in New York?" And I was like, "No, I literally landed and then helped my buddy pack up and drive back across the country to Minnesota." But good job, New York. They're actually taking this pretty seriously. In that, no other airport, because I went through Minneapolis and Detroit, and no other airport had anybody giving two shits about it. So
Yeah, it's a hectic time. I'm excited to see what. I'm really interested to see when this is over, like how we look back at this.
mm.
You know.
So I don't have any live streams, but there is a video currently out for Comatose for the song "Circles," our first track on the album, and then we did a video 3 weeks ago for "Skin," which is I think track 4 on the album, which should be out pretty shortly. Otherwise, hopefully we're maybe going to be back in the studio before the end of the year, and we have to kind of recoup some money from releasing an album first, since it's only been about a month and a half since "Oh Way Back" came out. But and hopefully by the end of the year we're playing some stuff, because we're dying to do it, and we've got all kinds of fun gear, and everything's it's so much different jamming than it is sending riffs over Dropbox.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the Dropbox tragedies. But thanks so much, James. Everybody, we are here with James of Comatose, A Way Back. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.